What's good, y'all? Anderson Emerald here, and today I want to talk about the men's 400, as I've been realizing that it's actually one of the most competitive and unpredictable events that we've seen over the past 5 years, kind of in this current generation. And I know that many people say that the women's 100-meter hurdles is the most unpredictable, but there's an argument that the men's 400 is just as, if not more, unpredictable than the women's 100-meter hurdles. It just isn't looked at in the same way because they're, well, actually no. So essentially I'm working on this video just about like the men's 400 and Botswana and like Africa and all kinds of different videos. But as I was looking at it, I realized that there hasn't been much consistency when it comes to the men's 400. So I'm gonna take a look, and this is just like the top men's 400 meter performers of each of the years. So I'm gonna look at the different performers, I'm gonna look at the medalists, and I'm also gonna compare this to the women's hurdles and see how kind of the turnover year over year actually does compare between the both of the events, and kind of highlight how the men's 400 meter hurdles is just not, the men's 400 is just really not consistent, or as consistent as we might perceive it to be. So just to dive in, looking at 2021, I'm just going to go across each of the years and then kind of compare them. Looking at 2021, where these are the top 10 athletes for the year. Of course, there's like 10 star, because in some years there was athletes who had the same time, so it might have been like the 10th time was shared by two athletes, or like the third and fourth time, or whatever it may be. But just rock with me. So in 2021, we saw these 10 athletes holding the top 10 marks in the world. Now if we go to 2022, how many athletes maintained their spot from the top 10 from 21 to 22? So Michael Norman, right? He, maintained a spot in the top 10. I'm just going to put a little highlight here for the color. You have Champion Allison, he was not. Ronnie James, he was in there, so I'm going to put another little color for him. Randolph Ross, he was in that top 10, maintained a spot there. Stephen Gardner, of course, he maintained a spot there. You have Michael Cherry, he was in that mix. So you have a good amount of guys. Wade Van Niekerk, he was not. Elijah Godwin, not. Matthew Hudson-Smith, no. And Vernon Norwood, no. So you're looking at 5 different guys who were actually able to come from the top 10 in 2021 and carry over into the top 10 for 2022. Pretty good. So just about half the list. If we go over to 2023, how many of these guys from 22 maintained a spot in the top 10? Well, Stephen Gardner, he's there. So let me just put another, I'm just gonna fill these up with quick colors just to highlight how many guys are coming over. So you have Stephen Gardner, Muzala is new, Rasheed McDonald is new, Wade Van Niekerk, he carries over, so I'm gonna give him a color here. You also have Antonio Watson, he's new, Ry Benjamin, Bryce Deadman, Emmanuel Bamadelli. You have Ryan Willie, Vernon Norwood, he carries over. And you have Matthew Hudson-Smith. So you have 4 guys who actually do carry over from 2022 over into 2023. So just one less, right? 5 guys from 2021 over to 22. But here in 22 to 23, you now have 4 guys who were in the top 10 and then carried over into the top 10 for the following year. What about 2024? Now, let's take a look at this. Quincy Hall, he's new. Matthew Hudson-Smith, he's carrying over. Muzala Samakonga, he's coming over. Ronnie James wasn't in it in 2023, right? But you do have Vernon Norwood, he carries over, and that's it. Michael Norman, Bob Bundori, Jareem Richards, they're all new. They weren't in it the previous year. So again, 3 guys this time are coming over from 23 into 2024 who were still in the top 10. What about this past year, 2025? So you have Jareem Richards, of course, he was in there. Zakiti Nene, Kevin Achipi, they're new. Ja'Cory Patterson is new. Caleb McRae is new. Rasheed McDonald is new. Matthew Hudson-Smith, he's carrying over. Quincy Wilson is crazy. He's in the top 10, which is wild. You have Muzala Samakonga. So you got 3 guys now carrying over from 2024 over to 2025 in terms of maintaining a spot in the top 10. So again, we went from 5 athletes in 2022 down to 4 athletes in 2023, down to 3 athletes in 2024, and then once again maintained at 3 athletes in 2025. So if we look at that level of consistency, we're seeing less guys maintain a spot in the top 10 each of the corresponding years over these past 5 years in this current generation of 400 meter sprinting, right? On the surface, it may look like, or I don't know, it may look like, oh, Stephen Gardner, Matthew Hudson-Smith, who else? Michael Norman, like certain guys are, in the conversation, but it's not as many as we might think. And I'll look at the medals in just a second. But before I take a look at the medals, how does this compare to the women's 100-meter hurdles, where, again, we see a lot of unpredictability, and it's like, oh my gosh, like these women are changing hands, you know, who knows who's going to medal. Let's just quickly take a look at the women's 100-meter hurdles. These are the top 10, you know, performers for each of the corresponding years. The times don't necessarily matter, just looking at the athletes. And again, I put 10 star because you might have, you know, 2 athletes who shared a time but are still in the top 10. So from 2021, you have these, you know, 10 or 11 athletes. Let's see, 2022, Tobi Amisan maintains a spot. Kenny Harrison maintains a spot. Jasmine Camacho Quinn, you have Brittany Anderson. Alicia Johnson is new. Tia Jones is new. Danielle Williams maintains a spot in there. Aaliyah Armstrong, Demisha Roswell, and Akira Nugent, they are all new. So let's throw in a quick highlight for each of them. Now, 22, so that's 5 women. 22 to 23, how many women maintain a spot in the top 10? Kenny Harrison, she's still in there. Nia Ali, she's not, right? Jasmine Camacho Quinn, she's here. Tobi Amisan, she is here. Masai Russell is new. Alicia Johnson, she is in here, right? She was in here last year. I'm sorry, in 22. Tia Jones, also in that mix. Aaliyah Armstrong, also in that mix. Akira Nugent, also in that mix. Danielle Williams, also in that mix. So now you have 8 women who carry over from 2022 all the way into 2023. 8 out of 10 women. 8 out of 10 women. What about 24? Akira Nugent, right, coming over. Masai Russell, also coming over. Samba Mayela is new. Alicia Johnson carries over. Grace Stark is new. Camacho Quinn is right in there. Tina Marshall is new, even though I think she was back in 2021. Nadine Visser is new. Nia Ali, she carries over. Danielle Williams, she carries over, right? Pia Skarzowska is new. So you have 6 women who are in the mix here who do carry over. So that's a drop off from what we saw in 2023 when only 8 women carried over, but here we have 6 women who actually do carry over into 2024, right? We're looking at 6 different women, and this is out of 11 women, but you know, 6 out of 10, let's, you know, call it top 10. Now finally, 2025, Masai Russell, of course, once again carries over. Tia Jones was not in the top in 2024. Grace Stark, she continues. Tobi Amisan was not there, 24. Tina Marshall, she is in that mix once again. Ditaji Kabunji was not there. Nadine Visser, she carries over. Akira Nugent, she of course was the world leader. Danielle Williams, once again. Alicia Johnson, she's right in the mix there. And then Aaliyah Armstrong, she misses it. So you do have finally, you know, 7 women who do carry over into 2025. So what I'm looking at here essentially is just a lot more consistency in the women who maintain their spots in the top 10 year after year after year, right? Again, compare that to the men's 400 where we're only seeing going from 5 to 4 to 3 to 3. That level of consistency, we're not seeing the same names. So it's a little bit more unpredictable on who's going to run fast each year in the men's 400 than it is in the women's 100-meter hurdles. And I guess you could say, oh, that's expected, right? We know the core group of women who are going to be running extremely fast. It's just that the medals is what's a little bit more confusing to determine, or who's going to make the final at the World Championships. That's what's really a little bit more confusing. Well, let's take an actual look at that. The men's 400 is completely up in the air year after year. Just first off, before I even look at the finalists, every single gold medal winner has been different every single year. Stephen Gardner, Tokyo 2021. Michael Norman, 22. Watson, 23. Quincy All, 24. Kevin Achipi, 25. Right? Every single year, we've seen a different world or Olympic champion in the men's 400 meters. Now, let's be fair. On the women's side, we've also seen a similar thing. We've seen a different world or Olympic champion in the women's hurdles between Jasmine Camacho Quinn, Tobi Amisan, Danielle Williams, Masai Russell, Ditaji Kabunji. So yes, it's been different every single time. But let's look at the finalists. Let's look at all the finalists who have actually carried over a spot into the subsequent championships. Well, first let's look at the actual medalists. So from Tokyo 2021, only Karani James actually carried over into the next global championships. He actually maintained a spot on the podium. I'm just gonna put this in. Just for now, I'm just going to put this in. Sorry, I'm just going to put this in the ping. So Karani James, he actually maintained a spot on the podium from 21 to 22. What about from 22 to 23? Matthew Hudson-Smith, he carried over. He improved from bronze to the silver medal. So he actually does maintain that spot. So we have 1 for 1. Matthew Hudson-Smith maintains that spot as well. So he goes from silver to silver, keeping it consistent. So he's actually gotten 3 medals from bronze to silver to silver. 2025, none of the medalists. So there's no medalists from here. So we see carryover from Karani James to Matthew Hudson-Smith to Matthew Hudson-Smith. compare that to the women's hurdles, and I'm going to look at the entire finalists. Compare that to the women's hurdles. From Tokyo 2021, Jasmine Camacho Quinn, she of course carries over, she gets a medal there, right? What about over from 22 to 23? Jasmine Camacho Quinn, once again, she also does get a medal there. Obviously, you're going to see how consistent she is. What about from 23 to 24? Jasmine Camacho Quinn, she also carries over, gets a medal there. So you're looking at some consistency there. What about from 24 to 25? Nobody carries over, but you do have a brand new set of athletes. One thing that is interesting though is the repeat champion or the repeat medalists across the board. So as an example, Jasmine Camacho Quinn, she actually gets, medals in every single global championships. 4 global championships. Kenny Harrison, she manages to medal in 2021 and 2023. So she's able to grab 2 medals. I'm just going to pull up and give her orange. Tobi Amusan, she's able to medal in 2022 as well as in 2025. So she's able to, kind of grab those medals there. So a little bit consistency there, which is pretty good. Gonna just throw the green. And then I think that might be it because Masai Russell missed a medal. Grace Stark was new. Ditaji was new. Serena, Daniel Williams, didn't. So you have 3 athletes on the women's hurdles who were able to actually win medals across all 5 of the global championships, at least 2 medals. Right? If we look on the men's side, and again, I'm going to talk about the finalists in a second. If we look on the men's side, you have Karani James. I'm going to change this to just a different color, but you have Karani James, who was able to, win 2 medals across the board. Matthew Hudson-Smith, he was able to win 3 medals. So we're talking about 2 athletes on the men's side. And then you also, I think it starts to drop off a little bit. Quincy Hall, he does have here. He got 2 medals. And at that point, I think that's the extent of it because Steven Gardner, he didn't. Zambrano, he didn't. Michael Norman didn't. Antonio Watson, newly minted champion. Colleen Kempenau-Chippy, newly minted champion. Wuzala Samakonga, he's a medalist there. Dream Richards, Bob Bundori. So it's a similar situation, but you could see on the women's side, there was a little more consistency with at least Jasmine Camacho Quinn being able to medal, across 4 championships compared to Matthew Hudson-Smith, who was able to medal across 3. And then you did have Karani James, medal across 2, Quincy Hall, medal across 2. Similar here, you had Tobi Amusan as well as Kenny Harrison. So maybe a little consistency, but Jasmine Camacho Quinn has been more consistent. Now, let's take a look at the actual finalists overall and see how many athletes were able to carry over a spot from the finals in one year over into the next year. So straightforward, example. And I'm just looking at the consistency to highlight how the men's 400 meters is a little more confusing than at least I initially had thought. So finalists from 2021, Michael Norman, he was a finalist. Karani James, he was a finalist from the year prior. Matthew Hudson-Smith was new, champion. Wade, Bapo, Christopher Taylor. Oh, crazy. Christopher Taylor, I didn't even realize he was a finalist in Tokyo 2021. So you got 3 finalists who carried over from Tokyo 2021 over into Eugene 2022, right? Budapest carrying over from Eugene 2022. Antonio Watson, he was new. Matthew Hudson-Smith, he was carried over. Quincy Hall was new. Vernon Norwood was new. Sean Bailey was new. I forget the guy from Norway or Belgium. I forget. Apologies. Wade Van Niekerk, he was in the final. Karani James, he was in the final. So same 3 guys. We did have them all carrying over into from 22 to 23 in terms of finalists, right? Making the finals. What about 24? Matthew Hudson-Smith, Quincy Hall, right? Samakonga is new. Dream Richards, Karani James, he made it over, and that's it, right? Michael Norman, yes, he made the Olympic final in 21 and he made the World Championship final in 22, but he missed it in 23. He was injured, didn't compete in Budapest. So we got a couple athletes there. What about 25? This one is rough. Dream Richards, that's it. Dream Richards is the only athlete from 2024 to actually make the final in Tokyo 2025, right? So we're looking at 3 athletes consistently from year to year, but then it drops drastically down to just 1 athlete. And that's obviously nothing to even say about, the medalists going across the years. What about the women's 100-meter hurdles, right? What about the finalists and the athletes who are able to make the finals year after year? It's going to be crazy. Jasmine Camacho Quinn. Well, let me go. Tobi Amusan. Brittany Anderson was unable to do it from 21. Jasmine Camacho Quinn, right? You have Daniel Williams did not make it. Devin Charlton was able to make it, and Kenny Harrison. So from 21 to 2022, you have 4 athletes in the women's 100-meter hurdles who were able to make the final once again. 23, Daniel Williams, Jasmine Camacho Quinn, Kenny Harrison, Devin Charlton, Akira Nugent was new, Tobi Amusan was in that final, and that was it. So now you have 5 athletes. So we're increasing just a step just a little bit of a step, increasing from 4 to 5, right? Now, Paris 2024, Masai Russell, Serena Samaela, they're all new. Jasmine Camacho Quinn, she's been, very consistent. Nadine Visser, Grace Stark, Devin Charlton, Akira Nugent, they were all in the mix. So we dropped down to 3 athletes who were able to make the final, coming over from 2023 into 2024. So maybe a little less consistency. Look at 2025. Tobi Amisan, she missed the final that year. You have Grace Stark, she was in the final. Masai Russell, she was in the final. Devin Charlton, she was in the final. And Daniel Williams did not make it in 2024. Nadine Visser actually did make it. So year over year, you're looking at approximately, an average of 4 athletes per year actually making the final from the previous year on the women's 100-meter hurdle side. Whereas for the men, it's looking like about 3 athletes per year, right? 3 average per year. So the reason I did all this is, again, just my intrigue as I was kind of looking at something as it relates to the men's 400, but just highlighting how inconsistent the men's 400 has been relative to the event that we have seen as probably the most, unpredictable, and quote unquote inconsistent. Let me not say inconsistent, but the most unpredictable event in the women's 100-meter hurdles. What I think we look at when it comes to women's 100-meter hurdles is these same athletes across the board. And I'll look at like the top athletes because this is like the same athletes for the most part. These top athletes are running so fast, so consistently, so it makes it more of a question who is going to be able to actually win the gold medal or actually get on the podium, because they're all running so fast. So it's like, oh my gosh, like these historic times happening at the same time makes it just so exciting for us and leaves it up to, quote unquote chance of like, oh my gosh, well, Masai Russell hit a hurdle, and so all of a sudden, Ditaji Kambunji is the world champion, or I don't know, Jasmine Camacho Quinn gets injured and all of a sudden, you have, Grace Stark on the podium. Like all these kind of factors where everyone is running fast, but the littlest thing, the slightest thing can lead to someone getting on the podium. Whereas in the 400 meters and on the men's side, women's side, whatever it may be, in the 400, because the race lasts such a longer amount of time, of course, one full lap of the track, and there's no hurdles to go off of, and these athletes, I guess, year over year aren't necessarily consistently running these extremely fast times, right? So Kevin Shippey, Quincy Hall, Matthew Hudson-Smith, Samakonga, Dream Richards, they all have been running, 43 seconds, add in Zakiti Nene and all that. But when you start to go down the line, these athletes like Lee Epi, right, or who else, Rasheed McDonald or Samuel Ghazi or Chris Bailey, like these guys aren't breaking 44 seconds in the 400. Sean Bailey, Vernon Norwood, but they are guys who are able to make finals and quote unquote be in the mix to a degree. So it gives the impression that it's like, oh, we already know the guys who are going to get the gold medal. We already know the guys who are going to get on the podium, because we're looking at the guys who are running 43 seconds, but not actually realizing historically, at least in this current generation, it has been a lot more up in the air in terms of who is going to, not only get the gold medal, because guys like Antonio Watson, not even breaking 44 seconds, was able to win gold in 2023. Kevin Shippey, before, let's be clear, be honest, you did not pick Kevin Shippey for the gold medal coming into the Tokyo World Champs, right? Maybe going through the rounds, obviously, but listen. So these guys are able to actually put their best foot forward and go out for the gold medal, or a podium spot. Whereas the women's 100-meter hurdles, you're talking about all these same women consistently making finals year after year and then finding ways to make the podium. Danielle Williams is a world champion, so she's going to be in the mix when she makes the final, right? Masai Russell, she is the second fastest woman of all time, so she's going to be in the mix if she makes a final. Tobi Amisan, she is a world champion and she's a world record holder. she's going to be in the mix. Grace Stark, she was 5th at the Olympics. she's going to be in the mix. And they all are running relatively consistent times around each other in the 12:1 to 12:3 range, right? Actually like 12:2 or whatever, but all of them are very consistent. So that's all it is. Again, I was looking up information for another video, but this is really interesting. The men's 400 is very, very unpredictable in terms of who the gold medal winner, is going to be, at least based on what we've seen over the past couple years. Dates back to, it's a more recent occurrence, because prior to 2021, we saw Stephen Gardner win in 2019, so he, got 2019 and 21, but since then it's been unpredictable. Prior to Stephen Gardner, we saw Wade Van Niekerk, 2015, 16, and 17. Prior to him, we saw Karani James and LaShawn Merritt essentially trade wins. LaShawn Merritt, 2008, 2009, Karani James 2011, 2012, you know, LaShawn Merritt 2013, and then Wade Van Niekerk. And then before that was Jeremy Warner winning 2004 to 2007. So we saw more consistency prior to what we saw now, but it's like just so up in the air. It's just crazy. So let me know what you think about the men's 400 and the event being, you know, just very inconsistent based on some of the information I gave. Let me know if there's anything I left out and just your thoughts in the comments and, you know, comparison to the women's 100-meter hurdles. Let me know what you think. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Truly do appreciate y'all. Thanks for watching.